Very much, Principal Deputy Speaker. Members, I begin by drawing the attention of the House to Table 1 on the page marked with Roman numeral 7 on my book, Steve, that I've got here. You will notice that the heading on the table tells us that the money we are debating today is not in thousands but in millions. So, therefore, this leads one to the conclusion that we are remarkably today voting on spending 31 trillion of resource and capital and 26 trillion in cash, going by the book, which must have been rushed out the door. If only it were so, Principal Deputy Speaker. Mind you, given the bill which was debated earlier in this House, the MLA one, indeed, one would be forgiven for thinking that some in this building do not regard that as a typo. My goodness, if His Majesty's Treasury is going to be that generous to Northern Ireland, perhaps then we, even at a stretch, could manage to pay for that once coveted bridge over to Scotland. But moving on to a more serious issue, I want to note tables 5 and 6 in section 1. Table 5 is headroom the Executive has decided to build in. The resource headroom across departments is almost 69.5 million, while the capital is almost 114 million. In fact, every department, with the exception of agriculture, has headroom built in. I take the point that the Treasury allocated monies late, as noted below Table 5, but nowhere can I find the amount of that allocation, nor which of the headroom figures allocated to departments in the Table 5 as a result from that funding. I would also make the point that while departments are very keen on getting headroom, as it obviously reduces their likelihood of an overspend at the end of the year, it does not encourage prudence when it comes to public finances. Allowing for such significant sums positively encourages bad financial management. Perhaps the truth is that the Executive don't care about good financial management. I then turn to Table 6 on pages marked with Roman numerals 20 and 21. This table is interesting because, as the heading states, it relates to expenditure resting on the sole authority of the Budget Act. That means that everything listed here has been set up by the Executive and is being delivered without any specific legislation or authority from this Assembly. Today, for example, could be the only occasion when we vote on the Homes for Ukraine scheme and the Strategic Migration Partnership Ukraine, something allocated over 2 million. It is the same story with the full dispersal asylum seekers scheme, the Refuge Integration Proposal, and the Afghan Citizens Resettlement Scheme and Afghan Relocation and Assistance Policy. But more significantly, we are today approving estimates of 12 million in welfare reform mitigations. The estimates promise that legislation will be in place by the 1st of April 2025. As we sit here today, there is no sign of a bill. I would draw members' attention to a document. This one, I think, is Mr. Reckon referred to, on the Department of Finance's website, entitled Managing Public Money Northern Ireland. Section 2.5 of that document deals with securing adequate legal authority, and it goes on to state, the Assembly usually authorises spending on a specific policy or service by allowing bespoke legislation, setting out in some detail how it would and should work. Departments should ensure that both they and their arm's-length bodies have adequate legal cover for any specific actions they undertake. But here we are today, voting over 24 million to departments without any bespoke legislation in place. The document produced by the Minister's own department says that the authority of the Budget Act should only be relied upon in certain limited circumstances. Normally, expenditure of no more than 1.5 million. We are here today voting on throwing this guidance out the window and approving expenditure through the Budget Act in one instance of 8 times that amount. I want to make a few comments on specific departments. On page 29, I find the spend for the Department of Communities in there as a 2,416,000 resource and 375,000 capital spend for support for other languages, in addition to the North-South language body. I would like the Minister to explain to the House what all that is going towards. On page 54, we have details of the allocations to the Department of the Economy. I discover that the resource spend allocated to Intertrade Ireland is 6,429,000. I challenge any member of this House to find a single penny earmarked for a body which the DUP told us would help address the issues associated with the protocol, namely Intertrade UK. Nothing coming from this House. You won't find it anywhere in the estimates. On page 200, we found that the estimates provide for over £1 million in capital spend on the maze. I can't imagine victims are going to be too happy about that. Just across the page from that figure, I see that 816,000 in resource and 700,000 in capital is going to the North-South Ministerial Council. I recently wrote to the North-South Ministerial Council. My questions revolved around a mysterious group called the EU Senior Officials Group. I requested information relating to the formation of the group, details of any changes to its remit since its formation, the current and past membership of the group, copies of the agenda for the meetings and copies of the minutes. I cited the Freedom of Information Act. What was their response to an MLA? Well, I got a nice one-page letter answering none of those questions and telling me the North-South Ministerial Council is not subject to FOI. This House has no business allocating well over £1 million to a body which is not answerable to us in straightforward questions that I have outlined.
Much appreciated. I call Jerry